From his wooden porch, Daniel watched the HOA bulldozer chew into the base of his mountain land his father had once sworn was sacred. "We're just collecting your unpaid fees," the HOA president, Karen, shouted with a smirk. But Daniel knew this was no collection, it was revenge. 2 months ago, Daniel refused to let the HOA fine his wife, Lily, for planting wildflowers outside their fence. Since then, the board had been looking for payback. Now, they claimed he owed thousands in community maintenance fees and had authorized excavation right through his property line. Daniel warned them, his voice calm but trembling, "This mountain holds back the stream, you touch it, and the valley floods." But Karen just laughed. "Maybe it's time nature taught you a lesson." As he stood helpless, rain clouds gathered above the ridgeline. Daniel's father used to say the mountain had a soul, one that remembered every wound. That night, thunder rolled across the valley like an angry drum, and Daniel whispered to Lily, "If they don't stop by tomorrow, something terrible will happen." Little did he know, the storm that would come wasn't just rain, it was retribution. By the next morning, deep trenches cut through Daniel's land. The HOA's hired crew laughed as they loaded dirt into trucks. Karen stood proudly beside them, clipboard in hand, shouting orders like she owned the place. "Once we clear this section, we'll put in a retaining wall. Consider your fees settled." Daniel clenched his fists. "You're breaking the natural water route. That slope channels runoff to the stream. You're creating a dam." But no one listened. The foreman only shrugged. "Lady said it's legal." Lily tried to reason with Karen one last time. "Our children play here. If this mountain collapses," Karen cut her off. "Then maybe you should have paid your dues." As evening fell, Daniel saw it, a hairline crack snaking up the mountain's face. The air turned thick and heavy. Even the birds went silent. He took a picture and sent it to the local environmental office, begging for an inspection. That night, lightning flashed again, but this time it lingered, bathing the torn mountain in eerie light. From their porch, Lily whispered, "It's starting, isn't it?" Daniel didn't answer. The creek behind the barn had begun to roar louder than before, as if the mountain itself was warning them. 2 days later, the first signs appeared, water seeping through the soil, small landslides near the edge of the property. Daniel called every number he could find, county office, environmental agency, even the local news. But no one cared. "That's HOA land now," they said. "You'll need to talk to their lawyer." Karen brushed it off when he confronted her again. "You're being dramatic. It's just rain." But Daniel knew better. He had grown up here, he could read the mountain like a book. The air smelled wrong, the soil was too loose, and the stream's color had turned muddy brown. At midnight, a sound like a groan echoed through the valley. Daniel rushed outside with a flashlight. The ground beneath the bulldozer pit was sinking, slowly, like a creature breathing. He could see tiny fountains of water bursting from cracks. Lily clutched his arm. "We should warn them." "I already did," he said quietly. They laughed. By morning, the HOA workers were gone, leaving half their machinery behind. And by noon, the mountain began to weep, thin streams of water running where the soil had been torn open. Daniel stood there, staring, realizing this wasn't erosion. It was the beginning of a flood. The rain came like punishment. Heavy, relentless, echoing through the valley like war drums. Daniel and Lily packed their essentials, moving their kids to higher ground. The HOA neighborhood, just below the slope, was still lit up, laughter, music, and a board meeting in progress. Daniel ran there through the storm, drenched, shouting over the thunder. "You have to evacuate. The ground won't hold." Karen scoffed. "You're hysterical. Go home." Then the first rumble hit, deep, low, and terrifying. The earth shuddered beneath their feet. Windows rattled. In the distance, the bulldozed section of the mountain collapsed like a wave. Water, mud, and debris thundered down, swallowing the road. Karen froze, her clipboard falling to the ground. For a moment, she looked like a statue carved from fear. Then chaos erupted, alarms blaring, people screaming, headlights flashing in all directions. Daniel grabbed her arm and shouted, "You wanted control? Now face the storm you made." But before she could answer, a wall of muddy water surged between them. From From the hillside, Daniel saw his barn vanish under the flood, and behind it, the HOA clubhouse disappeared entirely. The mountain had finally spoken. By dawn, silence returned. The rain had stopped, but the valley was gone, replaced by a brown sea of mud and shattered wood. Military trucks lined the flooded streets, and helicopters circled above, searching for survivors. Daniel stood beside the rescue teams, his boots buried in sludge. This wasn't just nature, one officer muttered. This was negligence. Karen sat in shock on a pile of debris, wrapped in a blanket. She didn't look powerful anymore. She looked small, broken. "We just wanted to fix the drainage," she whispered. Daniel said nothing. He simply pointed to the collapsed slope where her bulldozers had torn into the mountain's heart. "You fixed it," he said quietly. Officials began documenting the damage, noting that the HOA's unauthorized digging had destabilized the terrain. Insurance refused coverage. Lawsuits followed, yet Daniel felt no victory, only grief. The mountain that had sheltered his family for generations was scarred beyond recognition. But as the first sunlight hit the wet earth, he saw something unexpected: small patches of wildflowers rising from the mud. Lily smiled faintly. "It's healing," she said. Weeks passed, and investigations began. The HOA board resigned, one by one, as government inspectors confirmed that Daniel had warned them repeatedly. Karen faced a lawsuit for property destruction and negligence. Daniel attended every hearing but spoke little. When asked why he didn't stop them physically, he replied softly, "Because sometimes nature teaches better than people do." The story spread across the county. Neighbors came to apologize, bringing food, offering help. The valley that once ignored him now saw him as the man who tried to protect them all. One evening, Karen approached his temporary cabin. "I lost everything," she whispered. "My house, my title, my name." Daniel looked at her. Then at the mountains behind her, where grass had begun to grow again. "Maybe now," he said, "you'll understand what really had value." For a moment, she looked ready to cry. But she just nodded and walked away, her red umbrella glowing in the sunset, a final symbol of pride finally washed clean. Months later, the valley had transformed. Where the HOA once stood were open fields, fresh grass, and wildflowers, the same ones Lily once planted. A memorial sign read, "Nature forgives slowly, but it never forgets." Daniel rebuilt his home on higher ground, overlooking the restored stream. Every morning, he'd watch the sunrise and whisper to the mountain, "You kept your promise." News crews occasionally visited, calling it the miracle of Hollow Creek. But Daniel never saw it as a miracle, just justice in its purest, quietest form. Karen moved away, her name forever tied to the disaster. Yet Daniel never spoke ill of her. "Everyone has their storm," he told his kids. "Ours just came from the sky." And as the wind rustled through the valley, soft, peaceful, almost forgiving, Daniel knew that the mountain was alive again. Not out of anger, but out of renewal, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.